The wisdom of the serpent. From all times the serpent has been looked upon as the emblem of cunning. Serpent worship was also one of the most ancient and widespread forms of primitive religion, and still finds a place among the rituals of some savage races, as the negroes of the west coast of Africa, and until recently, if not still today, among the Red Indians of North America. It may be noted that among some of the Indian tribes, as the Dakotase, Shawnees, and Sacs, the word for spirit and snake are similar. The Vaudoo of the Haitian blacks is simply a form of serpent worship, though in its extreme forms it is said to include human sacrifice still occasionally, and clandestinely performed in the remoter districts on the authority of Sir Spenser, St. John, former British Consul in Hayti. The wisdom of the serpent is proverbial in scripture history. It is the first animal specifically mentioned in the Bible. Now, the serpent was more subtle than any beast of the field which the Lord God had made. Genesis 3. The word subtle is of course used here in the sense of cunning, and this attribute is bestowed more unequivocally in such passages as be the therefore wise as serpents and harmless as doves, Matthew x 16. In other passages, the serpent is referred to as the emblem of the devil. It was the rail of the evil one which it played in the Garden of Eden, where it was invested with more than human knowledge, while similar references are made in Revelation g. 9, and the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil and Satan, which deceiveth the whole world. The aphids of the early Christian church, so called from the Greek ophis, a serpent, were a class of Gnostics who, while they shared the general belief in dualism, the conflict of matter and spirit, the emanations, and the demiurgos, were distinguished by giving a prominent place in their systems to the serpent. We owe our knowledge of them mainly to Irenaeus, Clement, Origen, and Hippolytus, while Theodoret mentions serpent worship as still existing in the 5th century. The Aephites were antipathetic to the Jews and called themselves Gnostics, claiming that they alone understood the deep things of religion. It is not the object of this article to enter into a discussion regarding the symbolism of the serpent in religious life. The above remarks, however, demonstrate that serpent worship, in one form or another, has been general in all periods of history and among nearly all peoples, even the most enlightened, as there is no smoke without fire. So it may be held that these so-called superstitions rest on a substratum of truth. If serpent worship was not general among the ancient Britons, it is perhaps owing to the fact that snakes are not numerous in England, and such as exist are not of a very deadly nature, while in Ireland they are said to be totally absent. The fact is, human nature is always drawn towards the mysterious, and there is much that is mysterious surrounding the serpent and its life. To come to concrete facts. The case was recently reported in the Australian papers of a boy who seemed to be specially victimized by snakes under rather mysterious circumstances. There is a superstition among the Australian blacks, who are generally accurate observers of nature, that any person bitten by a snake is subject to further attacks, although not necessarily from the same reptile. Australian bushmen will also inform you that one snake bite is often followed by another from a different snake, possibly from the mate of the first offender. But with regard to the case of the boy above mentioned, this youth was the subject of repeated attacks by different snakes at his father's farm near Albury. For the 5th time within a few weeks, the nerve-wracked boy was admitted to hospital, suffering from the attacks of snake bite. Snake bites are not so numerous in Australia. Besides, it is a notable fact that no other person on the farm was bitten, except the boy himself. The boy was well aware of the tendency of snakes to attack a person who had already been bitten and had taken special precautions to prevent their approach. Nevertheless, the attacks continued in the most inexplicable manner. He was always accompanied by someone with a stick. In the daytime he wore leggings, which he only removed when he got into bed. Every hole, crack, and cranny in the house which could allow the passage of a snake was blocked up, and as a further precaution, a light was kept burning all night in his room. The matter caused much local comment and attracted so much attention that the boy was offered an engagement with a Sydney theatrical firm, which he declined. What is the mysterious influence which impels snakes to persecute persons who have already been bitten? Stranger still is the fact that they know that a certain person has been bitten and can communicate the information to one another, while at the same time they baffle in the most incomprehensible manner all attempts made to evade them. Many animals possess equally mysterious powers. The blood-sucking vampire of South America, a kind of bat, only attacks persons while they are asleep. The writer, who has lived many years in that part of the world, has been assured that attempts have repeatedly been made to attract the vampire by feigning sleep, but such ruses have never succeeded in deceiving the bat. It will only attack persons actually asleep, not merely feigning sleep. By what strange power does the bat discriminate between the actual sleeper and the person who merely makes a pretense? This is a digression, but bats, like snakes, are possessed of mysterious powers which have always caused them to be looked upon with awe by the ignorant and superstitious. Do snakes possess the power of fascination? This question has often been discussed, and the writer believes it has never been answered in the negative by those who have thoroughly and impartially investigated the matter. Those who deny the facts are generally those who have never taken the trouble to investigate. Cases of fascination by snakes have been so frequently reported on the highest authority that it is impossible to dismiss them lightly. Some have attributed this fascination to fear on the part of the victim. There is no doubt that fear can, and often does, play an important part in the process. But on the other hand, there are many well-authenticated cases in which fear could have played no part whatever. The writer has been informed by those who have witnessed cases of actual fascination that the bird or small animal, in some cases at least, not only refuses to fly away, but actually creeps closer to the snake, though moaning or crying piteously, the while, as though unable. This suggests something of a hypnotic action, and this hypothesis is amply borne out by other facts. There seems, however, to be more than one form of fascination, just as there is more than one form of hypnotism. Once the snake's eye is fastened on its victim, it is apparently able to control his movements. But if a person passes between the snake and the victim, so as to obscure the vision, even for a moment, the spell is broken and the bird or other animal escapes. We know that a person may become hypnotized by gazing at a small, bright object. May not the eye of the serpent possess a similar power, the action being intensified by fear on the part of the victim? The coiling of the serpent appears to increase its magnetic force, for it generally coils itself up when fascinating small animals. It has been objected by those who deny the fascinating power of the ophids that serpents have never been known to exercise this power in captivity. Not infrequently, attempts have been made to put it to the test by offering mice, birds, or other small animals to imprison serpents and watching their movements, without any positive result. It must be remembered, however, that in captivity the conditions are artificial and not to be compared to those which exist in the natural state. The confined snake is aware that some person is watching it, and under these conditions, it seems unable to exercise that intense power of concentration which is necessary for fascination. In those cases where fascination has been observed in the wild state, the observer has happened to come on the snake while it was in the act of casting the magic spell. Its attention is then so absorbed that it will allow an intruder to approach quite near before it is aware of his presence. It certainly would never attempt to commence operations while aware that the intruder was observing it. But there is another and more important distinction. There seems good reason to believe that an animal cannot be fascinated unless it is taken unawares. If forewarned, it is forearmed. This explains the habit of the snake in lying motionless and half concealed, generally close to some forest path, along which its prey is apt to pass. A snake so concealed can scarcely be distinguished from a fallen branch, and will even allow itself to be trampled upon rather than get out of the way, for its instinct is to heed motionless, and so take its prey unawares. It knows instinctively that all animals avoid it, hence its sense of security. As already stated, fascination is a form of hypnotism. A person cannot be hypnotized if he is forewarned and therefore prepared, and struggles against it. But he can be hypnotized against his will if taken unawares. Persons can be hypnotized at a distance at a time when they are unaware of the influence that is being exerted on them, and are consequently unprepared to resist it. For such an operation, exceptionally favorable conditions are necessary, but such cases have occurred. Again, the process of fascination may be compared to the act of blushing, to which it bears certain points of psychic resemblance. A person only blushes when he hears or sees something which causes a sudden and unexpected revulsion of feeling, such as shame, but if he is forewarned and knows exactly what is going to happen, as a rule, he does not blush for. Under such circumstances, he can control the muscles which produce blushing. This will serve to illustrate by analogy one of the processes of fascination. An unexpected encounter with a snake does not generally occur in captivity. At least the element of inexpectancy does not seem to have been applied in such experiments as have been reported. But the main drawback of these experiments lies in the fact that the snake's power of concentration seems to be destroyed by captivity, owing to causes which can readily be understood. The senses of serpents are unusually keen, and they are probably aware of being watched, even when the observer imagines himself effectually concealed. At the same time, his victims are nearly always forewarned against impending danger and therefore forearmed. In the work Problems of the Borderland by Mr. J. Herbert Slater, published by Messrs. William Ryder and Son, Ltd., the following account is given of a boa constrictor with powers which can only be described as hypnotic. Mr. Lenga, during his wanderings in the region of the Upper Amazon, was told of enormous reptiles possessing a strange power of attraction which brought their victims within their toils. He placed no faith in these stories till the case of Jose Pereira, a rubber worker, came under his notice. This he investigated and found the facts to be as follows. Pereira was paddling in his canoe down a stream when he heard a noise, made apparently by some animal. He ran his canoe to the shore and held his rifle in readiness. Seeing nothing, he continued his way down the stream. Several times he heard the noise, but saw nothing. Feeling very uneasy and uncomfortable, he paddled away, but returned to sit down upon the root of a tree, from which he soon found himself quite unable to move. Just then, 3 workers from headquarters happened to pass by, and hearing a sound as of someone in distress, they called out, and finally landed. They found Pereira in a state of collapse, and under the root upon which he was sitting, saw the head of a monstrous boa constrictor, its eyes fastened on its prey. They fired at it, and the spell was broken. Such is the story. Vouched for by Mr. Long. The snake was said to be 52 feet 8 inches long and 28 inches thick. In this case, it may be noted, not only was the man Pereira taken unawares, but he was even unconscious of the presence of the serpent. Had he been forewarned, he could probably have successfully resisted the influence. Although boa constrictors are not uncommon in South America, it is the only case of which the writer has heard in which they fascinated a human being. This is perhaps owing to the fact that they look on a man as a new and unfamiliar animal. A serpent does not seem capable of fascinating more than one animal at a time, which accounts for the immunity enjoyed by Pereira's companions, who arrived in time to effect his rescue.